In this video, we're going to take a step back in time and refocus on the topic of algebra, one of the math topics that you studied earlier in the year. Now, in this particular video, we're going to look at algebra, but with a specific focus on the terminology of algebra. So what I'd like you guys to do is please follow along with this video and copy the notes that have been drawn on this page exactly as they are into your book. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to give ourselves a topic title, Algebra Terminology, and then we're going to date the page. So for me it's actually the 13th, but for you guys tomorrow it's going to be the 14th of the 9th, 2020. And like all titles, we have to underline it. So please make sure you're using a ruler to underline. I can't do it because my computer doesn't have a ruler. Now, jumping into it, what I want you guys to write out is consider if we have something that goes 6b plus 23 minus 16t equals 8b plus 40. Right. What we've got here is, you might remember that it's called something along the lines of an equation. And the reason we call it an equation is because there's an equal sign here. Now, equations are made up of a number of different pieces. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to draw a box around this here. And what you'll find is equations themselves, they're made up of many things. The first thing of many things is going to be an expression. So on either side of the equal sign, we have what are called expressions. Now, delving a little bit deeper into that, let's focus in on the parts of an expression, because like equations are made of expressions, but expressions are made of smaller parts as well. So what we're going to look at is one of the smaller parts, and that is this, the 16t. So the smaller parts that we have are, consider we've got the 16t. This 16t is called a term. So we've got equations, we've got expressions that make up equations, and then the things that make up expressions are called terms. So this 6b here, that's a term. 23 is a term. Minus 16t is a term. 8b is a term. And 40 is also a term. Now, we can get more explicit as well when talking about terms. So the first one we're going to look at is consider this 40 at the end. Imagine that we've got a 40 there. Let's just change the color. Alright, cool. We've got this 40. But how can we describe 40? What is it? Well, we know it's a term, but what sort of term is it? And what we'll find is that 40 is called something along the lines of constant. So whenever we see a term and it only involves a number, we call it a constant. The other constant in this is the 23 here. So this 23 is a constant. Now we've got another type of term as well. Notice that we've got a 6b minus 16t and an 8b. So these guys, they've got a letter. They're composed of a letter, and they're also composed of a number. So first things first. Oops. Good. Ooh. First things first. The letter in front, the number in front of the letter, we call this a coefficient. Coefficient. So any number, if you see a term and the term is composed of a number and a letter, the number in front of the letter is called a coefficient. So in this case here, the 6 with the 6b, that's your coefficient. The minus 16, So the minus belongs to the 16, remember? Minus 16 is a coefficient. 23, that's not a coefficient because that doesn't have a letter with it. So to reiterate, the number in front of the letter is called the coefficient. Now the other thing that we're going to be looking at is the b. Let's change it to light blue. This b here, the b itself is called a variable. The word variable coming from vary, or to change, or to pretty much to change. So the b itself, it's representative of a number, but the number's not in there, so we call it a variable. So what we've got is a term, so this 8b is a term, and of that term there is a coefficient, so the number in front, and a variable, the letter at the back of it. Now one thing I should also note is when we put all of this together, what we find is that we see an equal sign. What we have is an equation. So this terminology is really important to know, because if we want to be able to speak explicitly about algebra, we have to use the correct terminology. So we have to refer to something as an equation, or if there's no equal sign, if we're only referring to this part in the blue box over here, we call this an expression. Or if we're referring to the right-hand side of the equation, we call that an expression as well. Now, if we're talking about specific things inside the expression, then we're then talking about terms. So please make sure that you've copied this down word for word and symbol for symbol in your book, because this will be the basis of what you'll be referring back to for the remainder of the topic.